it doesn't matter what rank you are in the military or what your status is. Suicide, ideation will come in all shapes and forms. As a sergeant major, my troops looked at me as an outstanding NCO that would take care of them and treat them right and to support them. But in retrospect, during that time frame, I was dealing with my own demons outside of being the sergeant major and hiding the fact of being actually suicidal, actually being, for lack of better terms, an alcoholic, and not wanting to die, but I felt like had lost my purpose. My soldiers were stopped at a Iraqi army checkpoint, and EFPs, which is a specialized IED, was detonated, which killed two of my soldiers, one that I was extremely close to. And my intention for that day was to be out with my troops. I was headed out to drop off my laundry, and I heard the big boom. It shook our whole building. The dust came down. I remember the smells of that day still in my mind. Well, when I was at the hospital and waiting their arrival from outside, I rushed to the door to help out the soldier that was critically wounded. And I opened the wrong door and saw my soldiers that were killed, and they were not in one piece. I remember looking at my lieutenant and seeing the blood on his boots. And I just said, "Sir, hold the people here." And I was dealing with all these moving parts all at once. And then, to get my other soldier out and get him into the hospital. And they wouldn't let me go in to be with my soldier, which was, you always take care of your soldiers. You're taught to take care of your soldiers and to be with them, but they would not allow me to go in and be with my soldier. And I always said the buck stops here because I'm the platoon sergeant. I am the senior non-commissioned officer in charge of that 42-man platoon. He was shipped over to the green zone. He was stabilized, shipped to the green zone. Once he left, he was in the warrior transition unit, injured warrior transition unit, and then medically discharged. And I had reached out to him trying to get him promoted in the process of it all, and he turned me down and refused to talk to me any further, which really put another level on top of, the level of losing soldiers. Now I've got a soldier that I'm trying to help in the best way I know how. And he's rejecting that offer and rejecting me. And therefore, I'm a failure as an NCO. When I got back home, I had been newly married prior to leaving. And for the first 2-3 months, I dived into the alcohol, into beer mostly, and just drank every day. I started drinking. I stayed up late at night. I watched Band of Brothers and cried. It cried. I felt alone. I felt like I had failed. I failed my Gold Star mother and father and stepfather. I failed my Gold Star son and daughter who had asked me to bring their father back home safe prior to us leaving. I was a failure. I started drinking quite heavily, and I decided that I'm going to go back to work early because I knew that if I went back to work, I wouldn't drink in the morning, I wouldn't drink on the job, and that I would be fine when I got home, and then I could drink when I wasn't on the job. The next 4 years was just a spiral of craziness. I destroyed that marriage with my suicidal ideation at all times, it seemed like. My anger, my frustration, my hate for self, my loss of purpose, everything was gone. I went and got a motorcycle. Um, I crashed that 3 times, wanting to die at the same time, but not wanting to die. That's how suicide ideation comes about. You really don't want to die, but there's no reason to live. You feel like you have no reason to live. And I went through another divorce, and then I met someone new, another veteran, started a family with her, and still with suicidal ideations, I went through and became, a first sergeant. I became a sergeant major, and I was into bourbon at the time and drinking more bourbon and more heavily at night. And I, I just finished a paper, I remember, and and I was exhausted and I was drunk and I just felt like I needed just to get rid of myself. That this wasn't worth it. That the paper was a failure because if you fail out of the Sergeant's Major Academy, you don't get to go back through, and they will remove your rank from you, and you don't get to be a Sergeant Major any longer, and you won't retire as a Sergeant Major, no matter how long you've held it for. And you know, I had to call friends to make it through that night, and then start over the next day. They're the only ones that really knew my struggles. I'm sure that my wife at the time knew my struggles. I'm not sure. We never really talked about them. But as a sergeant major, I would go to drill. I had, I had a lot of people. I joked around. I masked everything with humor because that's who Sergeant Major Six was. He was a humorous guy. He got along with people. You know, yeah, he was hot-headed when the point came that was needed to be, but I still had reason about me. Rock bottom for me was when I was drinking and it was causing huge problems in my marriage. Um, I was destroying another marriage. I was destroying 4 lives again because of my anger, because of what I looked at Six as. Six in the mirror was a piece of shit. He couldn't keep his troops from dying. He didn't bring his troops back. And I lived with that. I apologized to my Gold Star mother several times, and she reached out in love. And her daughter, my soldier's sister, reached out in love toward me. And I never understood that. And how could they love me? I didn't love myself. The first time that Joanna, my wife, asked me to go to HOOVES, I was like, whatever, I wasn't pleased about it, but she told me that she was going to go check it out first. I And so she went to the retreat. She came back and she was astounded and she loved everything that Hooves had to offer. And she said, and you're signed up and you're going to go. And I said, I don't want to go. And she goes, no, you're going to go. And so when it was my turn to come to Hooves, I was very angry to be here. I did not want to be here. I didn't want to sit amongst other veterans and have to spill my guts or have to explain myself. I'm a sergeant major. I don't talk about suicide ideation to the fact that I have it. I talk about suicidal ideation, helped all my troops around me because I had lost troops to suicide. Well, that night at Hooves, my whole plan was to leave when I first got here. I was angry. Um, my wife was still here. I just wanted her to go because I didn't want to implode or explode in front of her. Um, didn't have any alcohol on board, so I was uncomfortable in that direction as well. And we were told to go inside and look at these horse pictures and draw two. One of them, which where we believe we are now, and one to where we want to be at the end of the retreat. And I was like, yeah, okay, this seems dumb. But I went ahead and did it. And I said, well, when everybody's sleeping, I'm sneaking out anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Well, we went out on the patio by the fireplace, and the director Amanda asked if somebody would like to go first and explain the horses that they picked. And I definitely wasn't going to go first. I didn't even want to talk. I wasn't going to talk. And then it got to my turn. After about four individuals, it got to my turn. And I said to myself, I said, what do you have to lose? Truly, what do you have to lose if you put all the chips on the table right there? And that's what I did. I put all the chips on the table because I needed purpose in my life and wanted things to change in my life. And I wanted to be a person again. So, for the first time in my life, I decided to be truly honest of where I was out loud. I knew where I was on the inside, but I judged myself so harshly that I didn't want to share it outside of me. I was still a sergeant major at the time. Um, I was, and I explained that I was a sergeant major, and I showed a card of a horse. I believe he was all alone, and that's the way I felt. And it looked like it was in a desert, in barren area, and that's the way I felt on the inside. And that I just opened my mouth. I don't remember everything that I said, but I was honest about where I was in that moment and who I was at that moment. And in the process of all that, every time I opened my mouth throughout the retreat, I was honest, and I brought it up, and as I am now. You know, I have tears of gratitude now. Before I had tears of sadness, of of um, of defeat. Everything in my life that was so negative, and I thought so negative of myself, came flowing out during the retreat. After I was completed with what I had to say, my vulnerability led to one of the other guys that had gone previously to me stand up and said, if this guy can be that real, then I have to be as well. And other people sat around and were shaking their head. And I was like, okay, wow. Me being vulnerable as a sergeant major really turned some heads. Not that I was trying to turn heads or get people to look at me, because I didn't want people to look at me, because I thought I was ugly, you know, the worst NCO in the world. And but my vulnerability is what really, I think, started out that whole weekend retreat so well. I went through what I went through because my purpose was to help out others that have gone through similar things that I have. And when I got very present with the horse at the end in the round pen, and was very present with her, or with him, and I walked up to him and I looked at him and I said, you know what we got to do, so let's do it. And we completely, without hesitation, walked around that round pen. I had my fellow classmates coming up to me and slapping me on the back saying, you are the sergeant major. And that's the first time that I felt so grateful that I was that sergeant major. I am a leader. I am a good NCO. And I came back again, and I knew this is where I belong. This is where I needed to be. This is what I need to be doing. But being a mentor is number one in my book, because I've, I'm reaching that purpose of helping others. Since connecting to my purpose, I no longer have suicidal ideation. I no longer use substances to mask or to cope. And I realize now that I needed to go through what I went through to help others and to inspire others. And that's my main goal here. Even though I was in my dark place and with suicidal ideation, I knew I couldn't beat this alone. I reached out in the very darkest dark aspect of my time. And you can't beat this alone. You need a family. You're used to the family of the military. Reach out. There are many organizations out there like HOOVES that will give you that purpose and that direction and can help you.